Okay.
Let freedom ring. Thank you, Kathy Knight, the pianist for Alpine Baptist Church. Welcome to worship on this July the 4th weekend. In just a moment, Neva Smith is going to come up and lead us in our scripture reading from 1 Peter. I hope you've had a chance to read that this week. 1 Peter 2, 13 through 17, and then a parallel passage is Romans 13, 1 through 7. Welcome to worship, Alpine Baptist Church. It's a wonderful, beautiful day. I hope you're enjoying the weekend. And the announcements are, we're going to try tonight at 6:30 to have a get-together. Now, we're going to have to wait and see what the weather does. And if you don't feel comfortable coming, that's fine. But if you can come, bring a chair, wear your mask, whatever you need to do to feel safe, bug spray. And there'll be a few light snacks in packages. So we're going to do everything we can to make you feel safe and comfortable. And we're going to meet in the prayer garden. So we invite you to come tonight at 6:30 to worship with us, our first gathering since back in March. At this time, Aneva's going to come and read from 1 Peter 2, 13 through 17.
Therefore, submit yourselves to every ordinance of man for the Lord's sake, whether to the king as supreme or to governors, as to those who are sent by him for the punishment of evildoers and for the praise of those who do good. For this is the will of God, that by doing good you may put to silence the ignorance of foolish men. As free, yet not using liberty as a cloak for vice, but as bondservants of God. Honor all people. Love the brotherhood. Fear God. Honor the king.
Kathy. Thank you, Neva. We're trying to make this worship service more participatory as you think about envisioning yourself sitting here in these pews. I hope one of these days we can come back and see all these pews full of people, visitors, and members. Yesterday marked the 244th birthday of the United States. A time when grateful Americans like you and me should be celebrating being citizens in the greatest country on this planet. But across this land of the free, home of the brave, a virulent virus, revolting racism, and abhorrent anarchy have plunged this nation into a level of turmoil and upheaval that I have not seen in my lifetime. The 60s were pretty bad, but all combined, what's going on now is a lot worse than the 60s. To emerge from this slough of despond will require that we the people, you and me, we the people, and in particular those who believe we are one nation under God, had better stand together to counter the chaos, not by hostility, not by angry words, not by violence, but by practicing the biblical principles of good citizenship. That's what I want to talk about. Their instructions in the Bible are pretty clear to me. There's some things I don't understand in the Bible, but there are some things that are pretty clear, and these are clear to me. From 1 Peter 2 and Romans 13, we're going to focus on 1 Peter 2, and I want you to think about 5 questions. 5 questions that every American has the answer, or needs the answer, in particular Christian Americans. Number 1, how are we as individuals going to choose to live our lives? Liberty, whether it's political or governmental, spiritual, Christian, whatever, can easily degenerate into license. This birthright was handed down to us, this political freedom that we have, was handed down to us by our forefathers who paid a high price to attain it, and now it's being sold for the perilous pottage of undisciplined living. In his book, my favorite book of all time, A Touch of Wonder by a man named Arthur Gordon, written back in the 70s. One of the chapters is entitled, Freedom is a Two-Edged Sword. He writes, quote, our ancestors only had to fight for freedom. We have to live with freedom. And he goes on to point out that since America won its freedom, there's been a constant cry, give us more freedom. We want to have more freedom. Sadly, what this cry has morphed into is the freedom from being in situations that are hard, freedom from unpleasantness, freedom from the stern voice of duty, freedom from the pain of self-sacrifice. We cry for more leisure. I read something just this morning about the United States. Now we're down to 30-some hours a week work, and there are 168 hours. What are you going to do with the rest of the 130? Lollygag around? Seems to be what a lot of people are caught up in this world of looking for something to do and being entertained and just doing whatever we want to do. We don't take care of ourselves. We don't practice good habits. We don't treat others like we're supposed to. We live for ourselves, and the classic thing is the selfie. We live in a selfie time. Everywhere you turn, people are taking selfies. The cry for deciding moral questions according to the dictates of the current culture ignores the fact that once morals become relative, it's just hard to justify anything at all. All you got to do is look around in the news. Anything goes, with no thought of what the biblical principles are. In this climate of freedom, flinging off one external restraint after another, a bleak and chilling truth has emerged. We have not learned how to restrain ourselves. That's a truth that causes deep in my soul an uneasiness, despite all of our prosperity and power. It's the knowledge that we're abandoning the values and tenets once adhered to, but we found nothing better to replace them. And unless we learn some self-discipline and some restraint, the climate of freedom may be replaced with some form of repression. It didn't take Babylon but 1,000 years to go down. It didn't take Rome but 500 years to fall. And you and I, this country's been here 244 years, but we have no such comfortable margin. So the first question is, how are you going to live your life? For yourself, totally? Or are you going to live disciplined and restrained lives? Number two, how are we going as citizens to relate to our government? Now here's a touchy point right now. Just before his death, Stephen A. Douglas, known as the Little John of Illinois politics, he awakened from a coma, and this is what he said: "Tell my children to obey the laws and uphold the Constitution." Now, this is the principle Peter had in mind in this passage when he said, "Honor the king." You know, of all the four injunctions, verse 17, this one just blows my mind. When he wrote, you know who the leader was? Nero. You read 1 Peter 2, Romans 13, he's enjoining civil obedience as appropriate for Christians. I pray that those who are outside causing chaos, advocating anarchy, looting and burning buildings, and tearing down statues do not claim to be Christian, and those who are supporting them do not claim to be Christian. If you are, it's the ultimate expression of hypocrisy. The imperative by Peter has two implications here. Number one, it speaks directly to those who are arrogantly and trying to get positions of power, who are vigorously campaigning during this 2020 election that everybody is caught up in. What an impact on a free society if politicians realize that what they're clamoring for are gifts from God. Listen to me, politicians. Political offices, according to the scriptures, are not trophies to be awarded to those who survive the battle. This week, I just changed my mind on one of the votes because there's so many negative ads coming from this particular person. So I'm going to vote for the other person because he hadn't put any out. They are divine duties that should be entered into with fear and trembling. And let me tell you something. I'd be afraid to be a politician because I'm telling you, they will eventually face judgment if they do not conduct themselves responsibly and honestly and morally as they carry out their duties. God help them. In John chapter 18, there is an interesting exchange between Jesus and Pilate. Jesus and Pilate. Pilate said to Jesus, "Where are you from?" Jesus didn't feel a need to give him an answer. Pilate said, "You do not speak to me. I have the power to set you free. I have the power to crucify you. I have authority." Jesus looked him straight in the eye. I'm quoting, "Pilate, you have no authority over me unless it had been given you from above." Now that one line in the Bible should send chills down the spine of every power-hungry politician at all levels of positions of leadership. The arrogance of today's elected leaders in both parties is the epitome of conceit and pomposity. And no one that I've seen in the news lately is excused. Got it? The second implication is on us. It's important and it's incumbent upon each of us to be respectful and obedient to the government. To do otherwise is to run the risk of suffering for being disobedient. If you break the law, you should be punished. But more important, and listen to this, it's essential that the governed citizens be conscious of the state and where it goes wrong. And when it fails, to point it back in the right direction. We, the people, do have power if we don't just sit at home and complain. The Constitution affirms the right for the redress of grievances in the very First Amendment. And the Bible also says, while you're sitting at home and while you're going about it, pray for those in leadership. My Lord, if all the Christians just started praying, Lord, help this country get straightened out and those people in charge to calm down their tweeting and all the other stuff they're doing and do what they know they're supposed to do and do it right, the country will get straightened out pretty much. As long as evil is in this world, it'll never be totally straightened out. That's another sermon. Jesus was not a political revolutionary. He paid taxes. He functioned within the government system in which he found himself, and he did not advocate violence or civil unrest or the overthrow of the government. He didn't try to incite riots. Oh, he could have stirred those people up. They were ready when he went into Jerusalem on Palm Sunday. They were ready to rise up against Rome. He chose not to do it. He chose to live his life responsibly and self-sacrificially so that the people would see that he was different. You know, it's not America, love it or leave it. I get tired of that. I get tired of stickers anyway. I don't put stickers on my car. It's more like America. Pay attention. Address those things that are not right. And work together peaceably to make them right. Or lose the country. We must choose to respect those in leadership. Third, how are we as human beings going to relate to every other human being? Now that's a really an issue this day, isn't it? The first sentence of the second paragraph of the Constitution of the Declaration of Independence reads this way: we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men, and that means all people who are worried about that, all people are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And nowhere can I find in the Constitution, it's not a long document you can read yourself, I don't find in the Constitution where it provides for first and second class citizens. Although there is uniqueness and there is inequality among us, absolutely. The equality of all is much more significant in a free society. Equality and equal rights, that is primary. The differences that may separate us or the inequalities that may be there, they may be important, but they are secondary. Whatever may be the differences in abilities and functions in our society, all of us are equal in all that is essential to being a member of the human population. Why in God's name can't we see that? When Peter tells us to honor all men, he meant we are to respect every person, every man, woman, and child as a person of worth and value. It breaks my heart that just yesterday in Birmingham, an 8-year-old was killed in the Galleria and 3 other people killed. What is happening to us? That little 8-year-old is not some kind of bad person. He's a victim of what's going on in our society. We are to love people and use things, not love things and use people. You know, I think in a free society, in our capitalistic system, and I think it is a good system, but it tends toward using people, those at the top and those who have a lot of money, use people to build up the business, and then they rake in the profits when they ought to be giving a fair wage to all of their workers. I would worry if I were a CEO making millions and millions of dollars every year and I had workers who didn't have the basic needs that they require for life. Furthermore, this is so sad. It's been going on. I was a page in the Capitol when I was 13 years old, and I saw all this stuff go on. As a 13-year-old kid, I thought, my goodness, they're not really thinking about what's best for the state of Alabama. The scales of justice tend to be weighed on the side of those who have the most resources. It doesn't take a smart person to know that the rich and powerful and influential in our society seldom face the justice meted out to the poorer, weaker, and less influential people of society. And I'm a lover of sports. And I'm fixing to hit a sensitive spot, but I'm glad God let me live long enough to get to this point, because you know something? I used to have an obsession with sports. Man, my whole weekend was messed up if my team didn't win. Thankfully, I've gotten older, and I could not care less who wins or loses anymore. It just doesn't make any difference. Our culture is consumed with a craving for entertainment, whether it be sports or movies or whatever it is. People are decrying the fact that, my God, sports venues are closed. We're not going to be able to see baseball and basketball, and God forbid the football season be canceled. I'm not even going to go any further with that statement. It boggles my mind how many multi-billions of dollars are spent on entertainment. As I said a while ago, you work 33 hours a week, or 34, whatever it was. I just read it this morning. You got 130 hours. What you going to do with that? Well, we ought to be trying to reach out to people who need us. Oh, I want to go in so many different directions right now. It just boggles my mind how much we spend on ourselves and on these billion-dollar arenas. And that's not the only thing, though, with the priorities out of kilter. Politicians, there should be term limits. The original founders of our Constitution didn't intend for it to be some politicians for 40 and 50 years. People who go into Congress come out rich. And they still get, if they're just there for 2 years, they get a pension for the rest of their lives. Then there's excessive government waste. We put trillions of dollars into our economy trying to help people since the 60s in Johnson's Great Society, and we're not much further along than we were then in 50 years. Money won't solve the problem. There are numerous examples of misappropriated wealth for which those who have it, they will have to answer for. The Bible is clear. It is going to be very hard for the rich to get into the kingdom of heaven. Doesn't that shake you up a little bit? Yet across this free land, too many of our fellow citizens of all walks of life, they don't have the basic needs of nutritious food, necessary clothing, needed housing, and essential health care. And the need for reorientation of our priorities and values cries out for attention. But listen, not too many people are listening. At least based on our past history. Peter said we are to honor and respect all people. And let me tell you something. In Matthew 25, that ought to shake you to your soles and your feet. Because in Matthew 25, Jesus taught that judgment will be based on how we relate to the least and lost in our society. I know this is going a little long, but I'll try to wind it down pretty quickly. Number 4, how are we as Christians going to relate to another person within the church? Now I'm quit preaching and going to meddling. Because this choice speaks directly to the church, which in my opinion, holds the key to addressing effectively the disparities in a free society. Government will never solve the problem regardless of how many laws are passed, regardless of how many programs are put forth, regardless of how much money is channeled into those programs. Now, absolutely, the church's primary responsibility is to preach the gospel and share the good news. There's no doubt about that. To anyone who will listen. But I'll tell you what, it's equally important, the teaching of Jesus, that we're to be salt and light in a decaying and dark world. Yet the fellowship in many churches are hampered because they can't even get along within the walls of the churches. Even though we say we're bound together in the love and the Spirit of Jesus Christ. Again, that's another sermon. This nation desperately needs a rebirth of Christian love and exemplary fellowships. I passed a place in Montgomery. I had to drop my wife off this morning to help her sister-in-law. And I passed a little street in Montgomery that had 8 churches on it. And I wondered, do they work together to get the job done to help that community? I had a minister in Dothan a few years ago. I asked him a question. He said, several years ago we had 2 really rich guys in our church, and they wanted to eliminate homelessness in Dothan. They weren't asking for a lot of money. They were asking for the churches to get together and eliminate homelessness, and they could not get the churches together. One group didn't want to work with the other group because that group has some different beliefs. Can you imagine that? The church has become so institutionalized and organized and politicized that it is generally being ignored. Just indifferent to it. It's tragic, isn't it? That somehow or another we don't have a lot of impact. I'm not talking about getting out there with these demonstrators and cutting up like what they're doing. I'm talking about just living in the community, seeing the needs, and then fixing it. The sign we display to the world ought to be the same sign that New Testament Christians displayed. And we're going to study that whenever we do get back into the building here when we study the book of Acts. The sign was, behold, how they love one another. That's the way the world knows the church is legitimate. Not because we're the moral majority or we got political power. My Lord, we made a mistake. We politicized the church. If we fail to love like we're supposed to, all we are is a resounding gong and a clanging cymbal, Paul said in 1 Corinthians 13. The hope of this nation depends on the church and how we decide to be salt and light. Let me hasten on. Number 5. Now here it is. How are we as creatures going to relate to the Creator? If it's just right choices made here, then the other choices pretty much will be made appropriately, responsibly. And Peter urged his readers with 2 little words: fear God. Now listen, the word he used meant awe and reverence, not cowering in fright. Reverence means taking God at his word and taking his instructions seriously and giving him the honor and respect that's created. See, he's the creator, we're the creature. He's the potter and we're just little lumps of clay. Fear is the attitude of the person who is keenly aware that he is always in the presence of God. That used to scare me as a kid. I never could misbehave and be happy about it. It's the attitude of the one who speaks every word, performs every action, and lives every moment conscious of God. Now we call America a nation of faith. Our coins in God we trust. So even in the pledge, it's put in there in 1954, now people want to take it out under God. Yet it seems that a large segment of the population is making every effort to eliminate any reference to God, like we're going to offend somebody. A growing percentage of people, particularly those kids 30 years and younger, they don't even go to church anymore. Some statistic, I forgot to write it down, 30 or 40% have nothing to do with church anymore, and they're the ones coming along. The first part of the Ten Commandments deals with man's relationship to God. And then the second part outlines how we are to relate to other people. And when Jesus was asked what's the greatest commandment, he combined those 10 into two statements. Love God with all of your being. Love God completely. And love your neighbors as you love yourself. Now, it seems quite clear to me, and I'm a simple man, it seems quite clear to me that the problems and difficulties that run rampant across the land are closely parallel to the listed prohibitions of the second part of the Decalogue. The sure sign that we have failed to live up to that first part leads to swearing falsely, lying, bearing false witness, murder, stealing, coveting, adultery, any number of other forms of godlessness. Any nation that turns from God opens the floodgates to social injustice and wrongdoing. Proverbs 14:34 says, doing what is right makes a nation great, but sin will bring disgrace to any people. For any free nation to survive, reverence for the Creator is a stable foundation on which everything else is built. Now, probably most of you, if you know history, has heard of Alexis de Tocqueville. He lived from 1805 to 1859, a Frenchman. And he wanted to study democracy and find out why this young country of ours was working so well. So he came over here. And this is what he penned. He said, I sought for the greatness and genius of America in her harbors and ample rivers. It wasn't there. I sought for the greatness of America and the genius of America in her fertile fields and boundless forests. It wasn't there. I sought for the greatness and genuineness of America in her rich mines, resources, vast world commerce. It was not there. I sought for the greatness and genius of America in her public school system, in her institutions of learning. It was not there. I sought for the greatness of America and the genius of America in her democratic Congress. Oh my Lord. And her matchless Constitution. It was not there. Not until I went into the churches of America and heard the pulpits flame with righteousness did I understand the secret of her genius and her power. This is what he said. America is great because America is good. And if America ever ceases to be good,